The morning that would eventually change everything began like any other in the quiet outskirts of Wilmington, North Carolina, where the air carried the scent of the nearby Atlantic. The neighborhood sat a short drive from the coast, nestled among longleaf pines and modest homes with wide porches that seemed built for slow afternoons and the gentle humidity of the region. People there lived with the ocean as something of a neighbor, both comforting and occasionally unpredictable. On that particular morning, though, no one felt the need to brace themselves. There were murmurs on the radio about a storm forming far out at sea, but storms always formed out there. The tide moved, the winds shifted, and life went on. For Ben Carter, a man in his early 50s with a fondness for early sunrise coffee and backyard work, it was another day to check his tools in the shed and trim the azalea bushes he always struggled to keep symmetrical. His dog, Cooper, a friendly and curious golden retriever, followed him with a comfortable trot, tail waving like a banner of optimism. Cooper was a dog who carried the world as if it were offering him a treat, always noticing things before Ben did. If a leaf fluttered in a peculiar way, Cooper paused. If a neighbor's cat wandered too close, he offered a polite sniff and a friendly wag. He was gentle enough to calm anyone, but alert enough to sense when something was off. That morning, Cooper kept glancing in the direction of the distant shoreline while Ben worked, the rhythm of pruning shears punctuating the quiet air. A faint breeze rolled through, lighter than usual, the kind that makes wind chimes give a single hesitant clink. Cooper's ears lifted. Ben looked down at him and smiled. "Come on now, buddy. Nothing out there yet?" Still, Cooper kept watching. Not with worry, but with that kind of animal intuition that makes people wonder what dogs know long before humans do. When Ben finished trimming the last branch, he walked back toward the house, and Cooper followed, periodically glancing behind them again, as if checking whether the horizon had shifted. Inside, the house felt warm and familiar. The smell of toast lingered in the kitchen. A half-read newspaper sat on the counter. The hum of the refrigerator blended with the quiet. Ben turned on the radio again, letting the background noise fill the home. The announcer discussed the tropical system forming several hundred miles offshore, but the tone sounded calm, almost casual, like someone describing a distant event that might or might not matter. In this region, storms were simply part of life. Some families stocked shelves with bottled water. Others ignored the warnings until they grew serious. Ben fell somewhere between. If the weather experts made their voices tense, he would listen. Until then, he preferred not to treat every storm as a crisis. Cooper wandered to the living room window and pressed his nose against the glass. His breath fogged a small circle, and he tilted his head as though studying something invisible. Beyond the window lay the stretch of woods that served as a refuge for countless small animals. Squirrels darted between branches. Birds hopped along fences. A pair of stray cats known to the neighborhood often lounged beneath the pines. Cooper liked them all. He had a strange ability to befriend any creature brave enough to let him approach. Ben joined him at the window. "You see something out there?" Cooper wagged his tail, but his gaze remained steady. Ben leaned down, scratching behind the dog's ears, and Cooper gave a soft exhale, the kind that expressed both contentment and quiet alertness. Later that afternoon, the sky began to dim ever so slightly, though the sun still shone. Clouds thickened far on the horizon. Nothing dramatic yet, no sudden wind or smell of rain, but something subtle shifted. Even the birds seemed to pause in their movements. A few neighbors began rolling their trash bins closer to their houses, a small precaution born from habit rather than fear. Ben stepped out to check the sky. Cooper followed. Together they watched the cloud line creeping forward like a slow curtain. Ben went inside and turned on the television. More reports, more talk about the storm strengthening. Should still stay offshore, one meteorologist said, but still worth keeping an eye on. That evening, the wind picked up just enough to rustle the porch chairs. Cooper sat near the doorway, ears lightly raised. A few animals seemed unusually active in the woods, scampering in patterns that looked searching rather than playful. A deer moved closer to the tree line than usual, pausing to look toward the Carter home as though deciding how far to approach. The next morning, everything became a bit louder. Not alarmingly so, but different. The air had changed again. Radio voices shifted from casual to firm. What had been a tropical system became a hurricane. What had felt like a potential threat now became something worth preparing for. Ben stood in front of his kitchen counter, listening to the forecast. Category 2 now, with a projected increase by the afternoon. Cooper sat beside him, nudging Ben's leg with his nose when the weather tone grew more serious. "We've been through these before," Ben said gently, "and we'll be fine." But he could feel the old instinct forming, the one that told him to start gathering supplies, to bring in outdoor furniture, to make sure everything was secured. He stepped outside and began tying down anything the wind might toss. Cooper helped in his own way, following him from place to place, pausing in that watchful way that seemed to gather every sound. Birds fluttered overhead, moving inland. Squirrels raced across telephone lines with urgency. Even the stray cats appeared restless, circling the backyard as if searching for a reliable place to hide. Ben set out bowls of water for them, though they kept their distance, glancing between him and Cooper. The storm intensified faster than anyone expected. By midday, broadcast updates sounded more serious. The governor issued warnings. Evacuation zones expanded closer to Ben's area. Though his home sat outside the mandatory zone, he always paid attention when officials used certain tones. He began gathering candles, batteries, blankets, and canned food. He filled the bathtub with water. He checked the flashlight drawer twice, then a third time. Cooper followed him in a steady loop, watching him and occasionally interrupting his movements with a gentle nudge, as if reminding him to breathe. When a strong gust pushed against the house, Ben paused. That one was heavier. A sign of what was coming. Clouds thickened until the sky lost all color. The first distant rumble of thunder arrived shortly after. Rain began as a whisper, tapping on the roof with a gentle insistence. Cooper went to the back door again. Outside, the woods had grown restless. The deer returned, stepping closer than she ever had. A fox darted through the underbrush with quick, sharp movements. Birds clustered in the higher branches, then swooped low as if arguing with the wind. Something in the air told every creature the same thing. Time was running out to find shelter. Ben stepped out onto the porch. "You all need a place to hide," he murmured, mostly to himself. Cooper's gaze swept across the animals, then turned back toward Ben with a look that carried its own suggestion. Quiet, but clear. Soon after, rain intensified. Slow taps became steady drumming. The wind pushed with more boldness. The news announced the storm's rapid escalation, Category 3 approaching Category 4 strength. Ben locked the doors, shut the windows, and pulled blankets into the living room where he planned to wait out the storm. Cooper curled beside him, but he kept glancing toward the back door every few minutes. Ben noticed. "Something on your mind?" Another gust shook the house. Cooper stood, walked to the door, and looked back at Ben as if inviting him to follow. When Ben opened the door, a soaked and terrified cat darted across the porch and hid under the nearest table. Another followed. Then another. The fox lingered near the steps, hesitating. The deer paced anxiously at the edge of the yard. The wind howled again. Cooper stepped forward, but with gentleness, offering soft encouragement in his presence alone. Ben looked at the woods. These animals might not make it out there once the worst of the storm arrived. He crouched beside Cooper. "Should we let the little ones in?" Cooper wagged once. The storm surged louder. The decision grew easier. Ben carried the drenched cats inside. He placed dry towels near the doorway. He left the door cracked just enough for other frightened creatures to find safety. He had no plan beyond helping whoever came. Cooper positioned himself near the entryway like a quiet guardian. As night approached, lightning began stitching the sky. Wind shifted from steady to fierce. Rain pounded the roof with force that hinted at the storm's growing intensity. Forecasts now warned of a possible Category 5. Ben sat near the animals gathered in his living room. Cats curled against towels. Birds perched nervously on furniture edges. Cooper moved between them, offering a calming presence, nudging frightened animals and guiding them away from drafts. The storm had not yet reached its worst, but everything suggested it would. The air carried tension, the kind that made people turn off lights and lower their voices. The neighborhood, normally filled with conversation, had gone quiet. The sounds of the storm replaced everything else. As thunder rolled and wind battered the side of the house, Cooper moved again to the door. He seemed to sense that more were coming. More animals still out there searching for help. Ben watched him, understanding that something more significant was beginning to unfold. Something that would test not just their home, but their capacity for kindness. And as Cooper looked out into the storm-darkened yard, it became clear that this would be no ordinary hurricane. Something larger was forming, not only in the atmosphere, but in the quiet bond between one man, his dog, and the frightened creatures seeking refuge. The storm would grow stronger. The world outside would grow harsher. And Cooper, sensing what was to come, prepared himself to help in ways Ben had not yet imagined. The conflict had not yet begun, but its shadow settled over the home with a quiet, growing weight, waiting for its moment to break open. The conflict begins as the storm intensifies, and Cooper senses many more animals are still outside, struggling in the worsening conditions. As evening deepens, the wind grows stronger, pushing against the walls of the house in powerful bursts that make the windows tremble. Rain pounds in relentless waves, sometimes slanting sideways, as though the sky itself has tilted. Ben moves from window to window, checking each latch twice. Though the house was built to withstand hurricanes, this one already feels different. The news stations urge residents in the region to brace for catastrophic winds. The projected path has shifted again, drawing a thick red line directly over their area. Ben listens to the broadcast with a sinking feeling, eyes narrowing as the meteorologist explains how unusual the storm's rapid strengthening has been. Cooper stands near the living room door, barking once with urgency. Ben checks the peephole, though it is nearly impossible to see through the sheets of rain. When he opens the door slightly, cold gusts of wind blast inside. Cooper stands firm, staring out into the darkness. The trees bend dramatically under the force of the wind, and branches snap with sharp cracks. Even in the storm's fury, Cooper seems focused, his attention fixed on something beyond the porch. Ben peers out, and through the whipping rain, he spots movement at the edge of the yard. Several small animals, rabbits, a raccoon, and two of the neighborhood cats that had not come earlier, huddled together, drenched and shivering. They're trying to cross toward the porch, but the wind pushes them back. Cooper steps forward, ready to rush into the chaos. Ben holds him back at first, instinctively protective. But another flash of lightning illuminates the yard, revealing even more animals scattered through the trees, desperately trying to find shelter. Cooper gives Ben a pleading look, as if begging him to trust what he must do. "All right, buddy, but carefully." Ben opens the door wider. Wind roars into the house, knocking papers from the entry table. Cooper bolts into the storm before Ben can grab a jacket. The golden retriever lowers his body against the wind and moves toward the animals, guiding them with slow, controlled steps. He nudges the closest rabbit toward the porch. The raccoon hesitates, frozen with fear as rain falls in sheets around it. Cooper carefully circles behind it, pushing gently until it moves forward. Ben watches from the doorway, heart pounding. When the first group reaches the porch, he lifts the rabbits inside and dries them with a towel. The raccoon stops just short of the door, but eventually scurries inside as lightning cracks overhead. The two stray cats sprint across the wet wooden boards and dart into the living room. Cooper, however, isn't finished. More animals remain outside, their shapes barely visible beneath the flickering lightning. Ben steps out to call for Cooper, but the wind is too loud. Cooper does not turn back. Instead, he disappears into the shadows of the storm-soaked trees. Ben's heart tightens. He wants to follow, but the winds are too strong and the risk too high. The storm has fully reached their area now, and the meteorologist's voice on the radio echoes grimly. "A Category 5 hurricane has made landfall. Everyone should remain inside." Ben returns to the living room, checking on the animals now huddled in corners and beneath furniture. The power flickers. The lights dim. Thunder rolls with a depth that shakes the foundation of the house. As the winds scream outside, Ben feels the first prickles of worry for Cooper's safety. He sits near the door, listening for any sounds of movement. When lightning brightens the yard again, he catches glimpses of tree branches twisting violently. The news on the radio now speaks of storm surges and roofs torn from homes nearer to the shore. Rainwater begins to seep under the back door despite towels Ben has placed there. The storm growls like a living force. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoes from the backyard. Ben grabs a flashlight and runs to the window, shining the beam through the storm's madness. A large tree limb has fallen, crushing a part of the fence. The structural damage makes him uneasy. Another blast of wind rattles the entire house. He hurries back to the living room where the animals are gathered, trembling from fear. Minutes drag into what feels like hours, though only a short time has passed since Cooper ran outside. Ben checks the front door every minute, hoping to see his dog returning. When he finally hears scratching on the porch, his pulse leaps. He opens the door, letting in a gust of cold air. Cooper rushes in, soaked, muddy, and breathing fast. Behind him follow several more animals, 3 rabbits, a possum, and 2 birds who flutter inside on trembling wings. Ben quickly closes the door as another surge of wind blasts past. Cooper shakes himself off, water spraying in every direction. His fur clings to him in dripping strands, but his eyes remain alert. He nudges each frightened creature forward, guiding them deeper inside where towels and blankets await. Ben kneels beside him. "You did good, Cooper. You did real good." But just as he begins drying Cooper's fur, another crash sounds outside, louder this time, deep enough to reverberate through the house. The windows tremble again. From the living room, several animals jump in fear and scramble to find hiding places. Ben rushes to the front window. The storm has uprooted a tree near the street, sending it crashing across the power lines. Sparks fly briefly before the lights in the house go dark. The sudden darkness silences everything for a moment, except for the wind's unrelenting roar. Ben stands still, letting his eyes adjust as Cooper moves beside him, nudging his leg as though reassuring him. The radio, now battery-powered, continues broadcasting warnings. The announcer's voice describes wind speeds approaching 200 miles per hour in some areas. Homes closer to the coast have sustained severe damage. Emergency responders have been forced to halt rescue operations until the dangerous conditions subside. Ben listens, his stomach tightening again. He knows their home is sturdy, but this storm is stronger than any he's seen. As rain slams the windows, Ben returns to the animals gathered inside. He lights a lantern and places it on the coffee table, creating a warm, flickering glow that brings some comfort to the room. Cooper walks around to check on every animal. He noses the birds gently, making sure they're calm. He curls beside the rabbits and the cats, providing warmth with his body heat. Outside, the storm escalates with breathtaking force. Gusts slam against the walls with sharp, sudden impacts. Thunder rumbles so loudly the animals flinch. And yet Cooper stays focused, moving with purpose. But soon the situation outside grows even more concerning. The rain falling against the house changes pitch. It's heavier now, almost like a waterfall pouring onto the roof. Ben checks every window again. Near the back of the house, he spots water beginning to pool near the door. The drainage outside must be overwhelmed. The storm's center hasn't even fully arrived yet. If flooding becomes serious, they'll have a new problem to manage. He grabs more towels and places them at the door. Cooper follows closely, eyes scanning. The golden retriever gives a soft whine, then nudges a corner of the door frame. Ben realizes Cooper has sensed something else. He crouches and places his ear to the door. At first he hears nothing except the storm, but after a moment he catches faint noises, cries, whimpers, and something like scratching from the other side. Ben pulls back, startled. Something is trying to get in. He braces himself against the door and opens it slowly. Cold water splashes in as the wind pushes against him. Cooper darts out again, ignoring the danger. Ben shines the flashlight through the storm. At the bottom of the porch steps are several soaked and exhausted animals. 2 small dogs he's never seen before, trembling from fear. A trio of raccoons struggling against the rising water, and a young deer fawn, barely able to stand. The water level near the yard is rising faster than he expected. The drainage ditch behind his property must be overflowing. Without help, these animals won't last long. Cooper rushes to the fawn first, nudging its side until it walks. He directs it toward the steps. Ben carries the small dogs one at a time, shielding them from the wind. The raccoons cling to the lower steps. Cooper barks to guide them, staying between them and the growing water. Ben supports Cooper by shining the flashlight where it's needed the most. When everyone reaches the porch, he quickly ushers them inside and slams the door shut. He locks it, though it's not the wind he fears, it's the possibility of more structural damage. Water continues pooling outside the back door. Ben grabs blankets, wrapping the small dogs and trying to dry their shivering bodies. The fawn collapses onto a towel near the fireplace, exhausted. Cooper stays by the fawn's side. Ben sees that Cooper's fur is soaked again, his body shaking slightly from the cold and effort. Yet the dog refuses to rest, standing tall with keen alertness. The storm's eye wall is approaching, and the meteorologist warns the next hours will be the most dangerous. Ben feels his chest tighten as he takes in the gravity of the situation. The storm is no longer just damaging trees and knocking out power. It's threatening to breach the edges of their safe space. The animals inside the house number over 24 now: rabbits, raccoons, birds, cats, the fawn, and the newly rescued dogs. Every corner of the living room has become a temporary patch of safety. Cooper moves through them like a guardian, giving reassurance in soft huffs and gentle nudges. Ben wonders how many more animals might show up. He prays the storm spares the neighborhood from catastrophic destruction. Yet as he listens to the weather report, he knows the worst is still coming. The wind outside rises to a frightening new intensity, rattling the roof. Sheets of rain hit the house with a force that makes it sound like gravel. A deep cracking noise echoes from outside, followed by something crashing against the porch. Ben and Cooper both rush to the front door. Something has hit the side of the porch, but Ben can't see what. Cooper barks, ears forward. The storm has grown so intense it is nearly impossible to distinguish individual sounds. And then comes the moment that marks the true turning point, the point at which conflict becomes unavoidable. A shudder moves through the house, slow but powerful, like the building itself is bracing against a monstrous weight. The walls creak. A loud ripping noise follows. Ben's breath catches. He recognizes the sound a split second before he names it. Part of the roof is lifting. He races toward the hallway closet, grabbing ropes he keeps for emergencies. Cooper follows, barking warnings. The animals scatter in fear, some hiding under furniture, others retreating into the corners. Ben reaches the hallway just as a section of the ceiling creaks again. Water drips through the seams. A new gust of wind slams the house, and this time Ben hears a wrenching noise directly above the kitchen. He runs to the kitchen doorway. A portion of the roof shingles peel back like pages of a book, caught in the wind. Rain pours in through the new opening. He has to act fast. Water threatens to flood the kitchen. The animals inside are growing more frightened by the second. The house is losing its integrity. Cooper steps into the kitchen, paws slipping on the wet floor. He barks to get Ben's attention, then moves toward the back of the room. Ben sees what Cooper sees. The leak isn't just dripping, it's expanding. Water falls faster now, hitting the floor in heavy streams. They need buckets, containers, anything to catch the water. Ben pulls open cabinets, grabbing large pots and lining them beneath the leak. Rainwater splashes loudly inside them. The storm outside roars. The lights flicker again, even though the power is already out. Only the lantern provides steady illumination. More water seeps through the ceiling. Ben reinforces the area with towels, but the house gives another violent shudder. The animals whimper. Cooper releases a loud bark. Something else is happening. Something worse. A loud, hollow crack erupts from the back of the house, followed by a deep, groaning sound. Ben's eyes widen. That's the sound of a structural beam under pressure. If one beam fails, parts of the house could collapse. Cooper paces quickly, trying to draw Ben back toward the living room where the animals gather. The urgency in his movements is clear. They need to keep the animals safe and together. Ben follows, concerned. When he enters the living room again, he hears a new noise, like scratching, tapping, something faint yet persistent coming from beneath the floorboards. Cooper freezes, ears turning toward the sound. Ben kneels, pressing the side of his head to the floor. At first, all he hears is the storm's fury, but then it becomes clear. The scratching is coming from outside the house, near the crawlspace vents. Something is trapped. Another animal. Possibly multiple animals. But going out in this storm again is incredibly dangerous. Cooper whines and scratches at the floor, urging Ben to act. He circles toward the front door, then back toward Ben, over and over, tail rigid with worry. Ben shakes his head instinctively. "Cooper, it's too dangerous." But another crack of thunder shakes the house, and the scratching grows more frantic. Whatever is under there is running out of time. Ben realizes that he cannot ignore it, but he cannot just run outside without a plan. He finds a heavy raincoat and boots in the closet. He grabs a long pole used for clearing debris from gutters. Cooper stands at the door, ready. Ben hesitates only a moment before clipping a reflective vest onto Cooper, one he uses during evening walks. If Cooper must go outside again, at least he will be visible. When Ben opens the front door, the wind immediately blasts inward, pushing him backward. Cooper digs his paws in, leaning into the force as though bracing himself for another mission. Rain drenches them in seconds. They fight their way toward the side of the house where the crawlspace vents are located. The ground is soaked and uneven. Mud sucks at Ben's boots. Debris litters the yard. Tree branches, shingles, pieces of fencing, all tossed about by the storm. The scratching sound grows louder as they approach. Cooper lets out a sharp bark. Ben crouches beside the vent, shining his flashlight between the slats. Through the small opening, he sees something moving. Dark shapes huddled together. A pair of reflective eyes blink back at him. 3 of them. Maybe 4. Small animals of some kind, possibly young raccoons or another litter of stray cats. The vent is blocked by debris, fallen branches and wet leaves packed tightly by the wind. The animals inside must have crawled in earlier seeking shelter, but became trapped as the storm worsened. The rising water from the flooded yard is now pooling beneath the house. If the water rises much higher, the animals will drown. Cooper steps closer, planting his paws firmly. His tail lowers but remains steady. He knows the gravity of what they're doing. Ben wedges the pole into the debris, pushing hard. The wind fights back, shoving him sideways. Cooper leans against his leg as if trying to anchor him in place. Ben tries again. This time the branch shifts slightly. He works faster, clearing the vent piece by piece. Rain blinds him, running into his eyes. The storm howls like a living thing bent on stopping him. Finally, the last branch comes free. Ben pulls it aside. The vent is clear. He reaches in, scooping the animals out quickly before the wind can throw more debris against the opening. 4 small raccoon kits, soaked and trembling, cling to his gloves. Cooper licks them as Ben gathers them into the towel he brought. They hurry back toward the house as another burst of wind nearly knocks Ben off his feet. Cooper stays right beside him, steady as a rock. They reach the porch, stumbling inside. Ben closes the door behind them, breathing heavily. The lantern still flickers in the living room. Several animals lift their heads as Ben brings the new arrivals to a warm corner. Cooper circles them, making sure each one settles in safely. Ben sits beside him, drenched and exhausted. The storm outside continues to rage. The house shakes with each blast of wind. Water seeps from the kitchen ceiling. Some of the towels near the back door are fully soaked and need replacing. The situation is getting worse by the minute. Cooper lies beside the group of animals, chest rising and falling quickly, but his eyes remain attentive. He scans the room again, posture alert. Ben watches him with admiration and worry. This dog, his companion, has become the refuge leader tonight, guiding dozens of frightened animals to safety even as the storm grows stronger. But the conflict is escalating. The structural integrity of the house is weakening. Water levels outside are rising. The forecast warns of an incoming storm surge that could bring flooding farther inland. And most concerning of all, the storm's eye is nearing their location, meaning the worst winds are still to come. As the storm's roar intensifies and the animals huddle closer together, Cooper stands again, moving toward the doorway with that same instinctive focus that has guided him since the storm began. Ben feels the shift in the air, the sign that something even more difficult is on the horizon. The rising action is waiting just beyond the next thunderclap, ready to transform this already dangerous night into something even more challenging for Ben, Cooper, and every creature taking shelter inside their home. The rising action begins as the storm reaches an intensity neither Ben nor Cooper has ever witnessed. The house trembles under the sheer force of the wind, each gust sounding like the roar of an unrelenting tide. Rain pelts the windows with a ferocity that seems capable of carving the glass. The animals inside the home huddle in tight groups, trembling from fear and exhaustion, but the faint glow from the lantern and Cooper's steady presence keeps them from panicking completely. Ben checks the back door again, pushing a fresh towel against the widening stream of incoming water. The storm surge must be inching closer. The ground outside already looked flooded when he last opened the door, but now it is rising even faster. If the water reaches the level of the porch, they'll have more to worry about than leaks. Cooper follows Ben to the back door, ears pointed, nose sniffing insistently. He lets out a short bark, not of alarm, but of attention, as though trying to call Ben's mind toward something that isn't obvious yet. Ben kneels to inspect the threshold. The wooden trim is damp and cold. The wind howls again, and the entire house shivers. Something is shifting outside. The water rising. The branches thudding against the siding. The very soil around the foundation might be loosening. Cooper scratches the floor once and noses the corner of a nearby cabinet. Ben squints at him. "What is it, boy?" Cooper nudges harder, walking around the cabinet as though signaling that what's happening behind the walls matters just as much as what's outside. Ben gently moves the cabinet away from the wall. A small trickle of water streaks down the plaster. His eyebrows lift. There's a hairline crack in the wall, likely caused by a combination of stress from the storm and the subtle shifting of the foundation. This is bad. If the foundation weakens further, the structural beams could become compromised, and with the roof already leaking, they are fighting a battle on multiple fronts. He presses his hand gently against the crack. Water continues seeping through. The problem isn't catastrophic yet, but it is growing. That realization sets the tone for the next hours. The conflict around them is no longer just the storm. It is the accumulating strain the storm places on every part of the home and on their ability to keep dozens of frightened animals safe. Cooper senses Ben's rising worry. He walks closer, leaning against Ben's leg, his warmth steady and reassuring. Even though Cooper himself is tired, his breath's quick, and his fur still slightly damp from the rescue missions, he refuses to rest. His eyes track every sound from the storm like a sentinel guarding the others. Ben moves back toward the living room to check on the animals. The lantern flickers but holds steady. The rabbits nestle together, barely moving except to shift closer to one another. The raccoons huddle in a shallow box lined with towels. The birds perch near the fireplace, puffing their feathers to keep warm. The fawn lies on a blanket, its delicate body rising and falling with uneven breaths. Cooper sits near it often, making sure it calms. The newest rescues, the two small dogs, curl up under a chair, trembling but no longer shaking as violently as before. Ben takes a moment to count them all. There must be around 30 animals inside now, maybe more. The house, built to accommodate just one man and one dog, has become a haven for creatures terrified of the storm. A loud boom breaks the brief moment of quiet. Ben jumps, spinning toward the sound. It came from the front of the house, something heavy thrown against the siding. He grabs the flashlight and heads to the front door. Cooper follows closely, muscles tensed and eyes sharp. When Ben opens the door a crack, the wind tries to yank it from his grip. He peers into the darkness, shining the beam outward. A large tree branch lies on the porch steps, freshly ripped from the pine that once stood proudly at the edge of the yard. The trunk of the pine sways violently, another limb dangling precariously. If it falls the wrong way, it could hit the roof or the porch. Ben clenches his jaw, frowning. They can't do anything about it now. The storm is too strong. He pulls the door closed, locking it once more. The house shakes again as another thunderclap rolls overhead. He steps into the kitchen to examine the growing leak. The pots beneath the cracks are nearly full. He empties them quickly into the sink, then puts them back. Cooper follows, weaving around Ben's legs, careful not to slip on the wet tile. The rain intensifies again, pounding hard enough to drown out the sound of his footsteps. Outside, something bangs repeatedly against the side of the house, possibly loose siding or debris caught in the wind. The noise frays at Ben's nerves. Every new sound hints at some new damage. He checks the radio again. Emergency alerts now report widespread outages across the region. Entire neighborhoods have lost power. Some homes have already sustained heavy damage near the coastline. Emergency responders confirm that rescue operations cannot resume until wind speeds fall below safe thresholds. The storm's eye is still moving closer. Cooper sits at the doorway, looking toward the bedrooms. After a moment, he stands and walks down the hall. Ben follows him, heart beating a little faster. Cooper is never aimless. If he's going somewhere, there's a purpose. The hallway is darker than the living room, lit only faintly by the spill of light from the lantern. Cooper trots toward the last room on the left, Ben's bedroom. Ben flips on his flashlight. The beam sweeps across the furniture, the curtains, the floor. Nothing seems out of place until Cooper moves to the far wall. He sniffs it, pauses, then taps the wall with his paw. Ben kneels beside him. He shines the light across the wall and notices a slight bulge beneath the paint. His eyes widen. Water damage. The storm is pushing water under the siding, and now it's leaking into the wall cavities. If the wood beneath the drywall becomes soaked, the structural damage could worsen dramatically. He presses lightly. The surface feels spongy. Not enough to collapse, but enough to indicate serious stress. The house is holding for now, but if conditions worsen without Paws, they may face more trouble than they can patch up. Cooper steps closer, resting his head against Ben's shoulder. Ben sighs deeply. We'll get through it, buddy. Somehow. But even as he speaks the words aloud, he knows the storm is far from done. Over the next hour, the water outside continues to rise. Ben checks the back door repeatedly. The level is creeping up the steps. Floodwaters from the overflowing drainage ditch and the storm surge combine into a swollen pool that laps dangerously close to the threshold. If it reaches the door, water could push inside quickly. He searches the house for anything he can use to reinforce the back door. Sandbags? None. Heavy objects? He finds 2 crates in the shed earlier, before the storm had fully hit. They're not heavy enough to withstand raging water, but using them alongside towels and blankets might slow the seepage. He pushes them against the door. Cooper watches quietly, ears twitching at every noise outside. The storm's intensity peaks again. The thunder is constant, deep, and rolling. The lightning flashes so frequently the sky glows white every few seconds. The wind becomes a living thing, screaming past the windows with violent force. Then something happens that changes the trajectory of the night entirely. A sharp crack erupts from above, sharp, sudden, and unmistakable. Ben freezes. Cooper jerks his head upward, fur bristling. A second crack follows, louder this time. Ben rushes into the hallway and turns toward the kitchen. The ceiling groans. The damaged area in the kitchen is no longer just dripping, it's splitting. 2 long cracks form across the plaster as water pours into the room like rainfall. Ben races forward, grabbing the buckets and pulling them aside before they overflow. The cracks deepen with each passing second. Cooper barks repeatedly, sounding the alarm. The ceiling dips. Ben stumbles backward as a section of the ceiling finally gives way. A massive gush of rainwater and broken plaster falls onto the kitchen floor. The pots clatter across the tiles. Water splashes everywhere. The roar of the wind drowns out everything else. The animals in the living room panic. Birds flap wildly. Raccoons scurry behind furniture. The small dogs bark desperately. The fawn tries to stand but slips on the blanket. Cooper rushes to the living room, guiding the frightened animals toward the safest corners, nudging the birds back onto stable surfaces, herding the raccoons gently before they scatter in fear. Ben joins him, voice raised to calm the chaos. It's okay. Stay calm. Cooper, stay with them." The storm outside strikes the house with another brutal gust, and the walls tremble again. Ben assesses the situation. The kitchen is now compromised. The roof in that area is weakened. If the wind tears off more shingles, the damage will worsen. He needs to move the animals farther from that room. He quickly grabs the rabbits and small dogs, moving them into the hallway. Cooper helps herd the cats and raccoons. The fawn is the hardest to move, fragile and shaky from fear. Ben crouches beside it. Easy now. Just breathe. Cooper stands opposite Ben, nudging the fawn gently forward. Together, they guide it into the living room corner farthest from the damaged kitchen. Once the animals are safe, Ben kneels beside Cooper. "Good work, boy." But the danger is far from over. The storm's eye is approaching, bringing the strongest winds yet, followed by an eerie calm, and then another round of intense destruction. As he checks the windows again, Ben notices something awful. A large crack runs along the corner of the living room window pane. It wasn't there earlier. The pressure from the wind is testing every weak spot in the structure. If the window gives out, the animals could be injured. He grabs duct tape from the toolbox, reinforcing the glass in a crisscross pattern to help prevent shattering. Cooper follows his movements carefully. When the tape is secure, Ben steps back, breathing heavily. His hands shake from adrenaline and fear. The storm screams again. Another boom sounds outside. The pine tree in the yard loses another limb. It lands on the ground with a heavy, dull thud. Branches scrape against the siding like claws dragging across wood. The animals shrink back in fear. Ben tries to block out the noise, focusing only on what he can control. But the next moment brings something he never expected. A faint noise filters through the storm. the distant sound of a dog barking. Not Cooper. A different dog. A desperate bark. Cooper's head snaps toward the front door. He barks once, sharply. Ben freezes. The barking grows louder. Whoever that dog is, it's outside during a Category 5 typhoon-like storm. It must belong to someone in the neighborhood, or it could be a stray. It doesn't matter. A living creature is out there alone, terrified, and needing help. But Ben knows how dangerous it is. He hesitates, torn between fear and responsibility. Cooper whines, pacing near the door. Then he looks back at Ben with a determined expression. Not reckless, not impulsive, but full of instinctive certainty. Ben grabs his coat again, this time putting on an extra layer beneath it. He lifts his flashlight, checks the batteries, and takes a deep breath. Cooper stands tall beside him. When Ben opens the door, the storm fights him instantly. Rain lashes at his face like icy needles. The wind nearly knocks him off balance. Cooper braces himself, eyes locked toward the direction of the barking sound. They step outside, pushing through the wind like swimmers fighting a strong current. The porch is slick. Water floods past the steps, swirling in dark currents around debris. Trees groan and sway overhead. Lightning flashes, illuminating the yard in stark white light. The barking grows louder. Ben follows Cooper's lead as they move toward the direction of the sound, near the neighboring lot. The fence between the properties has collapsed, leaving broken planks flailing in the wind. Cooper leaps over the fallen fence piece and lands in ankle-deep water. Ben follows, though the water slows him down. They push through the yard to find the source of the barking. Under a half-fallen shed roof, a small beagle lies trapped beneath a broken wooden beam. The little dog barks again, its voice strained and desperate. Cooper rushes forward, barking encouragement. Ben kneels, lifting the beam with all his strength, though the storm pushes him sideways. Cooper adds his support by bracing his body against the shifting debris, steadying it. The beagle crawls free and immediately scrambles close to Cooper, shivering violently. Ben scoops the dog into his arms. It's lighter than expected. Thin, scared, hungry. Possibly lost. With Cooper leading the way, they make their way back through the flooded yard. The storm grows even harsher, wind whipping debris across their path. A metal trash can lid flies past them, clattering against the fence. Ben ducks, shielding the beagle. Cooper dodges another piece of flying debris. Together, they reach the house, stumbling onto the porch. Ben kicks the door closed behind them and locks it. The animals inside lift their heads, watching as Cooper leads the beagle to the warmth of the blankets. Ben dries the new arrival with a towel. The little dog whimpers softly, but gradually calms as Cooper settles beside it. The rising action escalates further. The storm is pushing the house to its breaking point. Each rescue takes a toll on Ben and Cooper, testing their strength and resolve. And yet, though Ben is exhausted, Cooper remains alert, moving from group to group, checking on the animals like a guardian, making sure no one is forgotten. As the night deepens, the storm hits another violent peak. Objects pound against the outside walls. The roof groans again, plaster dust falling from the corners of the ceiling. A beam somewhere in the structure makes a worrying creak. Ben prepares himself for whatever might come next. Cooper stands tall beside him, ready. The rising action has not yet reached its height, but the storm outside shows no hint of easing. Whatever lies ahead will test them even further as the storm pushes toward its most dangerous moment. The climax waits like a looming shadow on the horizon, ready to strike with the full force of nature and the challenges that will demand every ounce of bravery from Ben, Cooper, and the frightened animals seeking shelter within their fragile home. The climax begins on a night thick with pressure, when the storm outside has reached its most unforgiving fury, and the walls of the house tremble like they are fighting for breath. The animals gathered inside no longer startle at every gust, but their fear is a constant hum, a quiet vibration beneath the louder chaos of rain and wind. Cooper stands near the living room's center, gaze fixed on the hallway, as if sensing a danger no human ear could catch. Ben moves from one weakened spot in the house to another, checking the ceiling, the windows, the doors, rubbing the back of his neck as worry sinks deeper into his bones. The leak in the kitchen has grown from a dripping annoyance into a steady waterfall pouring into the largest pots Ben could find. Towels are soaked through. Water snakes across the tiles. And though he tried to slow it down, the damage in the ceiling has gotten worse. Every so often, another piece of soggy plaster slips free, splashing loudly into the accumulating water. The crash sends small animals scattering each time, and Cooper works to corral them back, nudging them gently, calming them with his quiet presence. Outside, the wind reaches a pitch so high, it sounds like a jet engine tearing across the sky. The storm warnings on the radio now use words Ben never hoped to hear. Catastrophic, life-threatening, extreme structural damage expected. The center of the storm is nearly upon them. Ben wipes sweat from his forehead, or maybe it's seawater. He can't tell anymore. The house rattles again. A violent gust slams into the front wall. The picture frames tremble. One falls, shattering on the hardwood. The sound makes Cooper tense. He steps toward the hallway, then stops, his ears lifting sharply at a new sound. A creak. Deep, slow, drawn out like the groan of something heavy under strain. Ben looks toward the hallway ceiling. A dark line begins forming above the bedroom doorway. He lifts his flashlight, shining the beam on the crack that wasn't nearly this pronounced an hour ago. His breath catches. The beam's reflection shows slight dust, trickling downward. Water follows it in thin streams. Ben steps closer. Cooper growls, a low warning that vibrates through the floor. Ben steps back instantly. The ceiling shifts. A faint, muffled pop comes from above, followed by another. Something in the attic beams is giving way. Cooper turns, barking urgently at the animals. His barks are sharp, precise, telling them to move. Even the frightened ones understand. Ben acts on instinct now. Everyone away from the hallway. Move them now! The animals scramble. Cooper moves faster, guiding each one, pushing the small dogs gently with his shoulder, herding the raccoons, even coaxing the birds toward safer corners with soft nudges. Ben runs to gather the last of the rabbits from their spot near the hallway edge. The ceiling groans louder. The sound is unmistakable now. Collapse. It's going to collapse. Ben throws himself backward with the rabbits clutched in his arms just as a massive section of the hallway ceiling buckles. Cooper leaps back, too, positioning himself between the falling debris and the fawn. In the next moment, the ceiling ruptures. Water, insulation, and plaster explode downward like a crashing wave. The lights in the house flicker violently, even though the power has been out. The lantern glow seems to pulse under the shock. The debris cascades across the hallway floor. Dust and insulation fill the air. Ben coughs into his sleeve as Cooper guides the fawn back toward the living room. Ben looks up, heart hammering. A gaping hole yawns above the hallway. The wooden beams exposed above are slick with rain and shudder under the storm's force. Through the hole, the storm rages visibly. Wind slices into the house through the opening, sending loose papers and lightweight objects tumbling across the floor. A terrifying realization hits Ben. If the hallway's structural support is compromised, the adjoining rooms could fail as well. He grabs the lantern, shielding its flame. Cooper stays near the animals. Ben moves closer to assess how far the ceiling damage has spread. The storm outside screams through the hole, pulling loose insulation into the air. Rain pours in, thunder rolls. Every passing moment adds more water to the floor. Cooper barks suddenly, drawing Ben's attention. One of the raccoon kits, startled by the noise, has bolted toward the hallway, trying to hide near the debris. But another creak sounds from above. Cooper rushes forward, sliding on the wet floor, reaching the raccoon just as a second chunk of plaster breaks free. He gently grabs the kit by the scruff, pulling it away from the danger. The debris crashes down behind him, sending up a spray of shattered material. Ben runs toward Cooper. "You okay, boy?" Cooper drops the raccoon near the others, then shakes himself once, water and dust flying off his coat. He seems unhurt, though his sides rise and fall heavily. Ben's breath trembles. Every moment feels like a miracle. One more second in any direction, and Cooper might have been under that debris. The animals huddle together. The lantern flickers again, as though even its flame is nervous. The storm's force grows worse. The wind no longer feels like it's outside the house. It feels like it's crawling into every corner, looking for new ways to break in. Another loud crack echoes from the far end of the house. The back door. Ben runs toward the kitchen, Cooper following. Water gushes beneath the door with renewed intensity. The crates Ben stacked earlier have shifted slightly. Water pushes through the edges. It's rising faster than ever now, probably from a combined force of the storm surge and the overwhelmed drainage system. Ben shoves the crates back into place, adding fresh towels, but the pressure of the water is relentless. Cooper noses the corners, whining. Ben knows what he's thinking. It won't hold forever. Water is coming. A new, sharper sound rings out, like metal bending. The wind outside makes the siding rattle violently. Cooper begins pacing again, ears switching in every direction. Something is coming. A new threat. Ben hears it too. A wind gust hits so fiercely the entire house groans. Then, suddenly, the living room window rattles louder than before. The crack Ben taped earlier widens with a jagged line. He races toward the window just as the wind slams a piece of flying debris into the glass. The tape holds for a moment. Then another gust hits. And another. The glass begins to bow inward. Cooper barks repeatedly, moving toward the window. Ben stands beside him, gripping the frame, feet planted. But there's no stopping the storm. A final blast comes, and the window shatters. Glass sprays inward as the wind punches through the open space. Rain pours in violently, soaking the blankets and the animals that scatter in fear. Ben shields his face with his arm, then lunges forward to grab a nearby board, a wooden panel he had stored against the wall for emergencies. He slams it against the window opening, fighting the wind to get it in place. Cooper helps the only way he can, by herding the animals away from the shards of glass. Ben's arms shake from the force as he pushes the board harder against the window frame. The wind feels like a living beast, trying to yank it away. He drives a nail into the frame with the hammer, his hands trembling. Cooper barks at a sudden movement. A cat is trying to climb the couch to escape the incoming rain. Ben nails the board in place as fast as he can, then checks Cooper. They share a brief look, a moment of unity in chaos. But the storm has more in store. The roof above the living room begins to shake. The beams rattle again. The wind finds a weak spot and pushes. A loud, ripping noise tears across the ceiling. Cooper jumps. Ben jerks his head upward. The seam between two ceiling panels splits. A narrow gap forms. Through it, they see another burst of rain spray downward. No, 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 Ben breathes out. He runs to his bedroom for a plastic tarp he stored months ago. When he returns, water is spraying faster. He throws the tarp over the couch and nearby animals, then reinforces the area with heavy furniture pieces to keep the tarp from blowing away. Cooper barks in steady warnings, pacing rapidly, forcing several animals to move farther into the room. The fawn stumbles again on the slippery floor. Cooper runs to its side, positioning his body to help guide it to safety. Ben notices something horrible when he turns back toward the hallway. The cracks in the walls there have widened dramatically. A fissure snakes down toward an electrical outlet, though with the power out, at least there is no risk of sparks. The house is being pulled apart slowly. He runs a hand through his wet hair, trying to think. They can't leave. The storm is too strong outside, but the house can't withstand this forever. They need a safe space, a room with enough support, fewer windows, and no ceiling leaks. The hallway is out of the question. The kitchen is compromised. The living room ceiling is weakening. That leaves only one real option, the interior storage room near the center of the house. Small, windowless, reinforced. Ben rarely used it except for tools and seasonal items, but tonight it might be their only hope. The problem is getting all the animals inside quickly and safely. Cooper seems to read Ben's mind again. He stands before the storage room door, barking once, then turning back to the scattered animals. Ben nods, trusting his instincts. He moves to open the door. The small room is cramped but structurally sound. He clears out a few boxes, pushing them into the hallway. Cooper starts moving animals toward it, using calm nudges and soft huffs to guide them. The rabbits go first. They huddle inside a corner. The raccoons follow reluctantly but eventually settle. The small dogs run in without hesitation. Birds perch on boxes inside. The cats hesitate, frightened by the storm's noise, but Cooper herds them in with remarkable patience. The fawn remains near the couch, legs trembling. Ben kneels beside it, lifting it gently. It's heavier than he expects. Cooper stays beside him every step as they carry the fawn toward the storage room. He sets it down carefully. It curls up, exhausted. Soon, nearly every animal is inside the room, except for Cooper, who stands by the door guarding it like a soldier at a threshold. Ben surveys the living room one more time. The tarp still holds, though water seeps around its edges. The patched window board groans under the pressure. Ceiling cracks spread further. He knows they have only minutes before another section of the house gives way. He kneels beside Cooper, one hand resting on the dog's back. "All right, boy, it's time. Let's get you in." Cooper gives a single, sharp bark, but remains rooted where he is. Ben blinks. What's wrong? Cooper looks toward the back of the house. The kitchen. A new sound rises from that direction. At first, faint, then louder. Scratching. Whimpering. More animals trapped? Ben's pulse spikes. No, not now. The water near the back door is rising rapidly. If animals are trapped outside in that flooding, their chances are slim. Cooper whines and takes a step toward the kitchen. Ben closes his eyes briefly. He knows that if they don't rescue those animals now, they may drown. But he also knows the house is close to collapse in several areas. It's a terrible decision. One of those impossible choices life stares at you with during the worst moments. Cooper nudges Ben's hand, reminding him without words who they are, what they've been doing all night, and what they must continue to do. Ben grabs his coat again, puts on his boots, and pulls the flashlight from his belt. He meets Cooper's eyes. "Let's go." Together. They run into the kitchen as the wind howls loudly enough to make the remaining ceiling plaster shake loose. The water pouring into the kitchen swirls around their ankles now. It's icy, filled with debris, and rising quickly. Cooper leads the way to the back door. Ben crouches, placing his ear near the floor. The scratching is louder now, and beneath the scratching, whimpers. Small, terrified whimpers. Ben unlocks the door. The moment he cracks it open, water pushes through violently, nearly knocking him back. Cooper plants his paws firmly, bracing Ben as he forces the door wider. Cold floodwater rushes in, soaking the kitchen floor. Cooper leaps into the rising water outside. Ben follows, gripping the doorframe as the storm rages around them. Lightning flashes. Thunder cracks. The backyard is completely flooded. Only the tops of shrubs poke above the swirling water. Cooper paddles through the flood with confident, strong strokes, his body rising and falling with the current. Ben holds onto the edge of the house, trying not to be swept away. Cooper reaches a cluster of floating debris. Branches, a trash bin, and something else wedged between them. A small carrier. A plastic pet carrier. It's half submerged and wedged tightly, rocking violently with the waves. Cooper paws at it, barking loudly. Ben slogs through the water toward him, grabbing onto the edge of the flooded porch railing to steady himself. When he reaches the carrier, he sees 2 terrified kittens trapped inside, water creeping in through the metal door. Ben grabs the top of the carrier and pulls, but it's jammed between branches. Lightning flashes again, illuminating the yard clearly for a brief moment. Behind Cooper and Ben, the rest of the backyard fence is collapsing into the water. They have only minutes before the rising flood becomes entirely unmanageable. Ben pulls again with all his strength. The carrier shifts slightly. Cooper grabs the carrier's handle gently with his teeth, helping to tug. The branches finally give way, and Ben hoists the carrier above the waterline. The kittens mew desperately. Cooper guides Ben back toward the porch through the current. The water reaches Ben's thighs now. Every step becomes harder. The storm lifts debris in chaotic swirls. Cooper pushes through, determined. They reach the porch and climb up before the water can pull them back. Ben sets the carrier down safely inside the house and collapses to catch his breath. Cooper shakes water from his fur and looks toward the kitchen ceiling. The cracks there grow wider. A large piece of plaster hangs precariously. Ben knows they must move fast. He grabs the carrier and hurries back to the storage room. The animals inside shuffle to make space for the new arrivals. Cooper stands near the doorway again. Ben places the kittens by the raccoons, who curiously sniff at them. Once again, the room is nearly full. Cooper returns to the living room, checking every corner, as if ensuring no animal remains outside the safety of the storage room. Ben prepares to join him, but then the worst sound of all erupts. A deep, reverberating groan rolls through the entire house, the kind of sound a building makes when it's about to lose something critical. Cooper stops dead in his tracks. Ben turns slowly toward the source of the noise, somewhere above the living room. The ceiling there dips slightly, and then it dips more. Cooper barks loudly. Ben's entire body floods with cold dread. The storm, the strain, the water. They've finally pushed the structure to its breaking point. The ceiling begins to collapse. And that is where the climax edges closer to its second part, where the storm unleashes its most devastating blow yet. And Ben and Cooper face the greatest test of their strength and their courage. The ceiling in the living room shifts with a long, painful groan, like the house is trying to hold itself together through sheer will alone. Dust falls from the cracks, drifting through the lantern's dim glow. Cooper stands rigid, muscles taut, eyes fixed upward. Ben feels the shift through the soles of his boots as the weight above them sags. The storm's rage outside only adds to the fear inside, the wind screaming through every small gap with a ferocity that rattles the very bones of the home. Another loud crack tears through the living room ceiling. The split widens, and a chunk of plaster breaks away, landing with a violent splash into the puddle forming on the floor. The animals inside the storage room cry out at the noise. Cooper barks urgently, a sound filled not with panic but with command, telling Ben to move. Ben sprints across the room, sweeping the remaining lanterns closer to the storage room door so he can see better. Cooper is already guiding several of the animals that had scattered in fear. Cats that had climbed onto furniture, birds that had fluttered toward the window, and one trembling raccoon kit that attempted to hide under a chair. Cooper nudges them all toward the storage room. Ben works fast, gathering anything that might fall victim to the collapse: blankets, boxes, food containers, and lanterns, and moves them out of the danger zone. The ceiling groans again. This time it's louder, deeper, and more ominous. Ben looks up just in time to see the wooden beams bow under the pressure. Rain pours through the widening crack like a stream. Cooper growls once, signaling that the collapse is no longer a risk, it's an inevitability. Ben reaches for him, but Cooper turns toward the living room's center, as though making sure no creature is left behind. Ben yells over the storm, "Cooper, come on! Inside the storage room!" But Cooper moves toward the far corner, where a small swallow trembles under a broken lamp. He picks it up gently in his mouth, carrying it toward safety. The ceiling lets out one final, tortured roar. Ben feels the shift in the air. The collapse is seconds away. He runs toward Cooper. Cooper turns at the same moment, swallow in mouth, and races toward the storage room. Ben rushes after him. Behind them, the living room ceiling gives out entirely. It crashes down with an explosive thud, sending wood, insulation, and rubble across the space they stood in moments earlier. The force of the collapse pushes a gust of air through the room, blowing dust into Ben's eyes. He turns, shielding Cooper as he slams the storage room door shut behind them. The impact shakes the walls. Inside the small room, every animal trembles, but the space remains intact. The sound of the collapse echoes again, muffled but terrifying. Ben presses his back against the door, breathing hard as dust clouds seep in from the hallway. Cooper sits beside him, Swallow still held safely in his mouth until Ben gently takes it and places it with the other birds. "Good boy," Ben whispers, voice shaking. "You saved it." Cooper's tail lifts slightly, even in this disaster. Ben wipes sweat and rainwater from his brow, trying to assess what remains of the house from the safety of the storage room. The wind outside continues to roar like a monstrous tide. The rain slashes against the walls with relentless force. Every few seconds, the remnants of the living room ceiling collapse further in muffled booms. They can't see it, but they can feel it. Ben checks the animals. Rabbits curl together in a corner. The kittens mewl softly in their carrier. The small dogs huddle beside the fawn, whose breathing remains shallow but steady. The raccoons cling to the cardboard boxes near the back. The birds perch atop the stacked luggage, feathers puffed in nerves. Cooper walks among them all, nuzzling each one as he passes. He moves like a guardian taking attendance after a battlefield evacuation. Ben kneels beside the golden retriever as he returns. The storm outside howls, but in this small room, Ben and Cooper share a moment of unity so strong it feels like another form of shelter. Ben hugs the dog close. We're okay. We're okay for now. But the night isn't over. A sudden blast of wind strikes the exterior wall so hard it makes the storage room shake. The animals whimper. Cooper lifts his head again, ears snapping to attention. Ben holds his breath, listening. The wind howls through the broken living room. Rainwater pours across the floors outside. Debris shifts. Somewhere in the house, another wooden beam creaks ominously. They're safe for now, but the house is losing integrity fast. Another impact hits. This one heavier, like a large object tossed by the storm, has landed against the house. Ben feels his heart pound. If one of the structural walls gives way, even this safe room might not withstand the storm's full strength. They need a plan. They need to reinforce the room. But stepping back into the hallway is dangerous. Cooper approaches the door, sniffing along its base. He lets out a low whine. Ben crouches beside him, listening. Water is seeping beneath the door again. The hallway outside must be flooding now that sections of the house have collapsed. The rising water makes every decision more urgent. Ben stands, taking inventory of the room. It's small, but stocked. There are heavy winter coats hanging on hooks, stacks of empty crates, plastic bins filled with supplies, and a metal shelving unit bolted to the wall. He can use these. First, he moves several crates and stacks them against the bottom of the door, forming a barrier to slow any incoming water. Cooper watches, head tilting with interest. Then Ben pulls the shelving unit closer. It's heavy, and scraping it across the floor requires every ounce of his strength. Cooper barks once and moves to help. Not that he can lift, but he braces himself behind Ben, pushing with his head against the shelving unit's bottom corner to guide it. Together, they position it in front of the crates and the door. It won't stop water entirely, but it will slow the flow and reinforce the door against impact. Ben exhales. Good. It's something. The animals shift nervously. Thunder shakes the walls again, and rain smacks against the roof like stones falling from the sky. The eye of the storm must be near. The pressure in the air builds. The winds reach a pitch that vibrates the floor. A strange quiet follows. Brief, surreal, unnerving. Then a colossal blast of wind slams into the exterior of the house with a force so powerful the entire structure shudders violently. Several animals shriek. Cooper stands tall, positioning himself between Ben and the wall. Ben presses a hand to the wall. It trembles under the storm's force. The eye of the hurricane is hitting their area, and they are at its mercy. The next minutes unfold in chaos. The wind wails through the open spaces of the broken living room. Debris crashes in the distance. The house creaks like an old ship tossed at sea. The water under the storage room door deepens, creeping slowly through the cracks. Ben kneels and stuffs another towel beneath the door, though he knows the water will keep coming. Still, every second matters. Cooper circles the room again, checking each animal. The fawn lifts its head weakly, nuzzling him when he approaches. The kittens mew loudly. Cooper licks the side of their carrier, calming them. Ben turns toward the ceiling. Even here, the storm's fury finds ways to penetrate. Water droplets fall through a gap near the light fixture, accumulating into a small puddle. It's nothing compared to the devastated living room, but it's enough to remind Ben that the room isn't invincible. Suddenly, A loud cracking noise splits the air. It's closer this time, directly above the storage room. Ben tenses. Cooper growls. Another crack. Then a groan. It's not the ceiling this time. It's the roof above the hallway next to the storage room. If the roof collapses further there, it could damage the storage room's wall. Ben presses his palm against the interior wall. It vibrates under the storm's force. A sickening thought forms. If the wall next to them fails, the room might not hold. Cooper senses Ben's fear and stands at his side, leaning into him with quiet strength. "We can't lose this room," Ben whispers. "We just can't." His mind races. They need reinforcement on the wall. He looks around. What can he use? The heavy plastic bins? The winter coats? The small wooden shelf? But then he sees it. A rolled-up rug leaning in the corner. Thick, dense, woven tightly. He drags it to the wall. Cooper follows. Ben unrolls it and props it upright against the wall, then stacks crates and bins in front of it to create padding and support. The makeshift reinforcement isn't perfect, but it offers additional resilience. Cooper watches every move, tail still. Ben steps back, breathing heavily. Another gust slams the house. The reinforced wall holds. For now. Minutes pass in agonizing uncertainty. The wind shifts, swirling with the unnatural calm that comes when the eye of the storm nears. The pressure changes dramatically, causing several animals to cry out in discomfort. Cooper's ears flatten at the sudden shift. Ben feels it too. A heaviness in his chest, a ringing in his ears. The eerie calm is worse than the chaos. It means the storm is changing phases, preparing to strike again with renewed strength. Rain slows, wind quiets. The world goes unnervingly still. Ben moves to the small window near the top of the storage room, the only source of outside view. He wipes the condensation from the glass. The sky outside looks strange, gray but lighter, swirling with motion even though the air is quiet. Debris floats in the floodwater outside. A toppled fence, branches, a broken chair from a neighbor's porch. They're inside the eye. It will not last long. When the back half of the storm hits, the wind direction will reverse. Everything they reinforced on one side will now be tested from the opposite direction. Every weak spot will be stressed again. Ben feels dread sink into his stomach. Cooper stands beside him, staring through the window with a steady gaze. The eye passes more quickly than expected. The winds pick up again, not gradually, but with vicious suddenness. They slam into the opposite side of the house, pounding it with renewed fury. The storage room shakes violently. Boxes topple. Animals yelp. Cooper barks commands again, herding them closer together. The storm roars louder than anything Ben has ever heard. The roof above the hallway tears away completely with a deafening rip. Rain pours freely into the ruins outside the storage room. A rush of water slams against the door from the outside. The crates buck forward. The shelving unit rattles. The door bulges inward. Ben and Cooper leap forward simultaneously, bracing their bodies against the shelving unit. The pressure from the floodwater strengthens, pushing with terrifying force. Ben grits his teeth, straining against the weight. The water inches through the cracks, soaking the towels and spilling into the room. The door hinges groan loudly. Cooper digs his paws into the floor, pushing with all his strength. His muscles tremble with the effort. The storm outside screams, objects crashing against the walls. Ben feels the door buck again. The pressure is too strong. They can't hold it alone. He turns toward the animals, his voice cracking but determined. "Stay back! Stay safe!" He throws his weight into the shelving unit again. Cooper barks furiously, refusing to give up. The door shakes. The water surges. And then, something shifts. The pressure on the door lessens just slightly, enough for Ben to catch his breath. The water outside must have redirected or risen past the door's seam. Cooper keeps pushing until the door steadies. Ben collapses to his knees, panting. Cooper lies beside him, exhausted but alert. They stay there for several long moments, listening to the storm rage, waiting for the next wave of destruction. The room continues to tremble. Water drips from the ceiling. But the door holds. The walls hold. The animals huddle in tight circles, trembling but safe. Cooper rises to check on them again, nudging each one gently, as though counting and noting who needs attention. After what feels like hours, though it might have only been minutes, the wind's intensity shifts, still strong, still dangerous, but slightly less sharp. The rain softens. The wind no longer shrieks like a creature clawing at their walls. The storm is easing, but it is not finished. Ben leans against the wall beside Cooper. He runs a hand through the dog's wet fur. "We're getting through it, boy. Just a little more." Cooper rests his head against Ben's knee. The storm outside shifts again, gradually moving toward something that still holds danger, but also carries the faintest whisper of change. The kind of change that signals the world is about to move from destruction into the long, uncertain path toward survival. And that shift opens the door toward the falling action that waits beyond the storm's fading roar, where Ben, Cooper, and the frightened animals inside the battered home will face the next stage of their ordeal. The falling action begins in the long, wavering silence that follows the storm's retreat from its most violent point. A silence that is not calm, but strained, as though the air itself is recovering from what it has endured. Rain still falls, but it is gentler now, more rhythmic than furious. The winds continue to blow, but their howling has softened into something more distant, more exhausted. The walls of the storage room tremble occasionally, but the violent shudders that shook the house only minutes ago begin to fade. Inside the cramped safety of the room, the animals remain clustered together, their small bodies trembling as they wait for any sign that the storm will surge again. Cooper stands among them like a steady pillar, his head turning slowly as he inspects each animal, ensuring no one is hurt. His wet fur clings to him, and he breathes heavier than usual. But his eyes remain bright, alert, fully aware that this moment is not yet one of relief, even if it is a step away from danger. Ben sits with his back against the reinforced door, listening closely. Every sound outside matters. Every shift in the wind, every creak of the battered house, every small splash of incoming water tells him something about the world beyond these walls. He can tell the storm is beginning to lose its grip, but the destruction it leaves behind will be significant, and they are still trapped inside what remains of his home. The water beneath the door continues to seep in slowly. The towels are soaked beyond use, flattened and heavy. The crates and shelving unit hold firm, though they groan whenever a small push of water hits them from the other side. Ben rises carefully, stretching the stiffness from his legs. Cooper watches him, tail giving a slow wag as if to encourage him forward. "It's okay, buddy," Ben whispers. "Just checking." He approaches the small window near the top of the room again, wiping the condensation from the glass with the sleeve of his jacket. The world outside remains gray and blurred by rain. Floodwater covers the backyard, reaching the base of the porch railing and surrounding every fallen branch, broken piece of fencing, and scattered debris. The pine tree that once stood tall now lies partially submerged, its trunk snapped cleanly near the base. The sight sends a chill down Ben's spine. If that tree had fallen just slightly differently, the house could have taken a direct hit. Cooper joins him at the window, pressing his head against Ben's knee. "We're still standing because of you," Ben says softly. "You saved every single one of them." Cooper's gaze remains fixed on the window, though his posture relaxes slightly as the storm's fury fades further. Ben walks back to the animals. The kittens in the carrier huddle together, their tiny bodies rising and falling with nervous breaths. The fawn's ears flick as it shifts its weight. The raccoons peek over the tops of the boxes, their eyes wide and reflective. The dogs, normally energetic, stay pressed against the blankets. Ben gently pats each one, checking for injuries or signs of distress. So far, everyone seems all right, shaken, terrified, but unharmed. A loud, distant crash echoes outside, and the animals tense immediately. Cooper's ears snap up. Ben stiffens. But after several seconds of listening, he realizes it must be something outside falling late. A tree giving way after hours of strain, or some piece of debris collapsing onto saturated ground. He takes a deep breath. Okay, it's outside. Not here. Cooper glances around the room again before lying beside the fawn, offering warmth. The dog's body may be tired, but his sense of responsibility never wavers. Ben sits by the reinforced door, pressing his palm flat against it. "The storm is dying," he murmurs. "Slowly, but it's dying." The words feel like an anchor in the churning uncertainty of the moment. Minutes stretch into longer passages of time. The storm continues to weaken, though it still mutters and growls through the remains of the house. Rain taps the roof with softer insistence. The wind hums mournfully instead of screaming. The pressure in the air shifts again. Less heavy, more dispersed. Cooper lifts his head, sniffing. He senses the change before Ben does. The worst has passed. But the danger is not over. The storage room remains their only protected area, and the state of the rest of the house is unknown. It could be salvageable, or it could be teetering on collapse. Ben isn't sure. Finally, when the storm's voice resembles little more than a tired sigh, Ben decides it is time. He kneels beside Cooper. "We need to check the house." Slowly. Carefully. Cooper stands immediately. Ready. Ben moves the crates and shelving unit from the doorway, bracing himself for the possibility of more rising water. When he cracks open the door, a small wave of water pushes in gently, swirling around his boots. The hallway beyond is wet and filled with debris. Plaster pieces, insulation, and broken fragments of the ceiling. The air smells of damp wood, soaked drywall, and cold storm air. Cooper sniffs the hallway before stepping out. Ben follows, holding the lantern high. The hallway walls show deep cracks, some more serious than he expected. The ceiling above the hallway is completely gone in places, exposing beams and dark sky beyond. Rain drizzles through the broken sections, falling in quiet droplets. The kitchen is worse. Water floods the entire room, nearly ankle-deep in some places. The collapse in the kitchen ceiling is even more dramatic, gaping holes where wood, insulation, and drywall have fallen through. Ben steps cautiously, trying to avoid the deepest puddles. Cooper's paws create soft splashes as he follows. Ben surveys the damage, shaking his head slowly. This will take months to fix. But they survived. That's what matters. The living room, however, leaves him breathless. Nearly the entire ceiling has collapsed. Large wooden beams lie across the floor at odd angles. Plaster and debris are scattered everywhere. Rain pours through the open section of roof, turning the floor into a shallow pond. Furniture is toppled. The window he boarded up earlier still holds, though the board is soaked and strained. Cooper sniffs cautiously around the edges of the destruction, weaving through fallen panels and broken insulation. He pauses often, checking for any animals who might have fled during the chaos. Ben stays close behind him. They find no new animals, no one harmed, but the destruction is overwhelming. Ben forces himself to refocus. He cannot afford to dwell on the damage now. His priority is getting the animals into a safer area of the house, somewhere more stable than the storage room, which is too small for long-term shelter. The bedroom, despite the wall damage, remains relatively intact. The ceiling there has not shown signs of collapse. He decides to move the animals one group at a time. Cooper immediately begins guiding them. Ben holds the lantern high to light the path. The rabbits go first, hopping nervously along the path Cooper directs. The kittens remain in their carrier. The small dogs follow Cooper closely, trusting him completely. The raccoons move in cautious steps, glancing around anxiously. The birds flutter onto Ben's shoulder and arms for balance. The fawn struggles to stand at first, but with Ben's steady support and Cooper's soft nudges, it moves forward. Bit by bit, they gather in the bedroom. The space is cramped, but much safer and drier. Once the final animal is inside, Cooper lies near the doorway, watching over them. Ben sits on the bed, exhaling deeply. The storm continues outside, but the worst has clearly passed. This is the lull after the fight, a moment when they can finally breathe. But the falling action continues. The danger hasn't ended. Hours pass slowly. Rain continues to patter outside, but its rhythm soothes rather than terrifies. The wind settles into a steady breeze. Floodwater outside shifts and rises in different areas, but no longer rushes violently. At last, when dawn finally approaches, pale gray light filters through the torn edges of the walls and windows. The sky outside lightens. Morning arrives. And with it, the world reveals the aftermath. Ben steps outside onto what little remains of his porch. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of wet earth and broken timber. The sky is a soft, hazy gray, the clouds thinned by the storm's passing. Cooper walks beside him, surveying the landscape as though assessing the new reality of their home. The yard is unrecognizable. Every tree has been stripped or splintered. The fence is gone. Debris floats in standing water that covers most of the ground. Neighboring homes have taken similar hits. Roofs torn, siding ripped away, windows broken. The neighborhood looks like it has been carved through by a giant who dragged enormous hands across the land. Cooper sniffs the air, then trots toward the edge of the yard. Ben follows, careful not to slip on mud or submerged objects. They reach the remnants of the fence. Cooper pauses, ears lifting. He senses something. Ben listens. A faint noise travels through the quiet. A soft whimper, far off. Another animal? Maybe trapped. Maybe hurt. Cooper barks once, then looks back at Ben. Ben doesn't hesitate. Lead the way, buddy. Cooper runs ahead, splashing through the waterlogged grass. Ben follows, moving around debris faster than he expected his exhausted legs could carry him. They reach the neighbor's yard, or what remains of it. The shed is gone. The swing set toppled. The whimpering grows louder. Cooper rounds a fallen tree and finds the source. A young dog, a small border collie, tangled in a section of collapsed fencing. The dog tries to lift its head, but is too exhausted. Cooper gently approaches, sniffing and offering reassurance. Ben kneels beside the trapped dog, clearing the broken wood. The dog whimpers again when Ben lifts the fence piece, but it quickly realizes he's helping. He frees the dog carefully, checking its legs for injuries. The dog licks his hand weakly. "Another survivor, Cooper," Ben murmurs. "Let's get you somewhere warm." He lifts the border collie into his arms. Cooper walks beside him as they return to the house. Inside the bedroom, the animals shift to make space for the new arrival. The border collie curls into the blankets, exhausted but safe. Cooper lies down beside it, offering warmth. Ben steps back, looking at the entire group, more animals than he ever expected to shelter. The storm has ended, but their journey is far from over. They have no power. The house is heavily damaged. The flooding outside could take days to recede. Rescue teams won't reach them immediately, but they are alive. In the delicate quiet that follows the storm, the barnacled edges of fear begin to lift. Ben kneels beside Cooper. "You did it, buddy. You got them all here. Every single one." Cooper lowers his head into Ben's palm. The dog's eyes soften. He is tired, completely exhausted, but refuses to rest until every creature is safe. Ben looks around the damaged house. They will need help. Supplies, clean water, repairs, and the animals will need to be checked by professionals. But for now, they have survived the impossible. Cooper stands again and walks toward the broken doorway that leads into the living room ruins. He pauses, looks back at Ben, and wags his tail once. The message is simple. There is still more work to do, more to assess, more to understand in the aftermath of chaos. Ben follows him into the ruined space, stepping carefully through the debris. The storm has passed, but the path ahead is still uncertain. The Resolution waits just beyond the horizon, like the sun that hasn't yet broken through the clouds, and the falling action moves steadily toward it with every careful step. Cooper and Ben take together through the wreckage of the world the storm has left behind. The Resolution begins the following morning, when the final remnants of the storm drift away, and the quiet left in its wake feels loud enough to hum in the bones. The clouds linger overhead in a blanket of pale gray, stretched thin like worn fabric after a long night of strain. The wind has settled into something closer to a whisper, brushing gently against the broken edges of the house. The rain has slowed to a soft drizzle, more like the storm apologizing than continuing its rage. The air smells of wet earth and pine, snapped apart by forces too strong to resist. The world outside feels bruised, but breathing. Inside the bedroom where Ben, Cooper, and dozens of rescued animals sheltered through the storm's fury, a different kind of stillness settles. It is the calm that comes after fear has emptied itself. The animals, Exhausted beyond measure, sleep in clusters across the blankets and towels Ben arranged earlier. Some lie curled together for warmth and comfort. Others stretch out as though relieved to finally have enough space to relax. Cooper lies closest to the fawn and the small dogs, his body partially curled around them in a protective arc. His chest rises and falls steadily, but even in sleep, he seems watchful. Ben sits nearby on the edge of the bed, staring at the soft rise of dawn through the cracked edges of the blinds. His body aches from carrying crates, fighting floodwaters, reinforcing crumbling walls, and staying awake through the storm. But he doesn't feel the weight as much as he expected. Something about surviving the impossible lightens even the heaviest of burdens. He glances at Cooper, unable to keep a quiet smile from forming. "You did it, buddy," he whispers. "You made all this possible." Cooper's tail thumps once against the floor in sleepy acknowledgement. Ben rises slowly, joints stiff, and stretches. He walks carefully through the bedroom so as not to disturb the animals. Once in the hallway, he lifts the lantern and surveys the waterlogged destruction. The hallway ceiling gapes open to the floor above, or where the floor should be. Rainwater drips softly, forming new puddles. The kitchen remains flooded, though the water is slowly draining into the cracks and seams of the floorboards. The living room is still the worst, an open wound in the heart of the home. Ben steps carefully around fallen beams and broken plaster. The tarp he anchored earlier still holds over one section of the living room, fluttering gently with the breeze that now enters where the roof once stood. Beyond the destruction, beyond the debris that looks like the scattered remains of an entire chapter of life, is the quiet miracle of survival. As Ben steps onto what remains of the porch, Cooper follows, having woken without a sound. His paws make gentle prints in the wet wood. The yard that once held a neat lawn and a tidy line of pines now looks like a lake, dotted with branches, broken fencing, and unrecognizable scraps of the neighborhood. A distant dog bark echoes faintly, someone else's pet calling out in confusion or fear. Cooper's ears lift. Ben places a hand on his back. "We'll help who we can, but we have to take it slow." He feels Cooper's body relax under his hand. The golden retriever isn't racing toward danger anymore. He knows the difference between immediate crisis and the quieter, slower work ahead. They step off the porch. The mud sucks gently at Ben's boots. Cooper navigates more easily, weaving around puddles and fallen branches. They walk the perimeter of the house first, assessing the damage. The siding is torn in several places. The gutters hang loose. The entire east-facing wall shows signs of stress where the wind battered it hardest. The backyard fence lies completely flattened. The outdoor shed is gone, carried away by floodwaters that receded just enough for them to see patches of earth underneath. Cooper sniffs at the broken edges of the yard, occasionally pausing at spots where the scent of another animal lingers. He doesn't bark, just notes the presence, then moves on. Eventually, they make their way back inside. The animals begin waking from their deep, trembling sleep. The rabbits stretch and nuzzle each other. The raccoons peek out from behind boxes. The kittens let out soft mews. The border collie struggles to sit up, but manages, looking around with tired eyes. Cooper enters the room and immediately moves among them, offering reassurances with nuzzles and gentle touches of his nose. Ben brings bowls of water from the bathroom sink, one of the few places where water still flows faintly from the pipes. He places the bowls around the bedroom. The animals move toward them one by one. Cooper waits, allowing them all to drink first. Only after the last kitten has had water does he take a long drink himself. Ben smiles again. "You're something special," he murmurs. After tending to everyone, Ben returns to the porch to look out over the street. He sees movement down the road, 2 neighbors stepping through the wreckage of their yards. They wave weakly. Ben waves back. Cooper wags his tail, but doesn't leave Ben's side. A man across the street calls out, voice cracking with exhaustion. "Everyone okay over there?" Ben calls back. "We're all right. Lot of animals here, but we're all right." The man gives a disbelieving nod. "Good. Help's coming soon. Emergency crews should be here within the next couple hours. Might take longer for some neighborhoods, but they're moving in." Ben breathes a small sigh of relief. 2 hours doesn't sound so bad after the night they lived through. Still, he knows the work is not done. He returns inside to secure the remaining animals. He ties a bright towel to the damaged porch railing, a signal to rescue teams that there are living people and animals inside. Cooper follows him every step, watching, assessing, staying alert even as fatigue tugs at his limbs. The morning unfolds slowly. The rain stops entirely. Birds begin to sing again. Weakly, unsure at first, then with renewed coherence. The sky brightens. A faint beam of sunlight pierces through the clouds, touching the broken world with gentle warmth. Cooper steps onto the porch and tilts his head upward, letting the sunlight wash over him. For the first time since the storm began, his tail wags with something closer to joy than reassurance. Ben joins him. They stand in the growing warmth for a long moment. It feels like a promise that the world can heal. After nearly an hour, the distant wail of sirens approaches. It echoes over the wreckage of the neighborhood, a sound that signals hope and safety. Cooper's ears perk. Ben pats his back. "That's our cue, buddy." A rescue truck slowly turns down the street, navigating fallen branches and abandoned belongings. 2 emergency workers step out, one man around Ben's age and a younger woman who scans the area cautiously. They approach the house with wide eyes when they see the destruction. "Sir, did you shelter people here?" the woman asks. "People and animals," Ben replies with a tired laugh. "A lot of animals." "How many?" Cooper barks once, as if answering. Ben scratches his head. "Honestly, I lost count after 30. The rescuers stare at him, then at Cooper, then at the ruined house. The older man steps forward. "Sir, how did you manage all that?" Ben glances down at Cooper. "We didn't do it alone. This guy led them all here." The rescuers crouch in front of Cooper, petting him gently. The woman shakes her head in awe. "He deserves a medal." Ben laughs softly. "Yeah, he does." They help Ben transport the animals out of the house, one group at a time. The rabbits go gently into a portable enclosure. The kittens stay in their carrier. The raccoons are placed carefully into secure boxes. The birds travel perched on the rescuers' gloved hands. The dogs walk beside Cooper, trusting him with every step. Even the fawn accepts help when Cooper stays close. More rescue workers arrive. Soon the driveway fills with vehicles. Animal services, local police, volunteer groups coordinating supplies and shelter arrangements. News crews eventually appear, though Ben keeps them at a respectful distance. He doesn't care about the cameras. He only wants to ensure every animal is safe. As the groups assist with relocation, Cooper moves tirelessly, checking on each creature even as they're loaded into safe carriers and vehicles. The rescuers take note of his behavior, whispering among themselves about the remarkable nature of the dog, who guided dozens of animals through a Category 5 storm. Once every animal is secured and ready for transportation, Cooper stands beside the last carrier, refusing to leave until the doors are closed. Ben kneels beside him, placing a hand on his back. "It's all right, Cooper. You did what you were meant to do. They're safe now." Cooper looks at him, then finally allows himself to sit, panting softly. The exhaustion Ben expected from him since dawn finally shows. Ben wraps his arms gently around the dog's neck. "I'm so proud of you." They watch as the last rescue van pulls away. The emergency crews stay behind to inspect the house's structural safety and to take note of the storm damage. Several neighbors gather in the street, offering each other support. Despite everything, the community stands strong, though shaken, in the aftermath. Eventually, a young rescue worker approaches Ben as he and Cooper sit on the porch steps. "Sir, I wanted to let you know. The animals you sheltered will be taken to a temporary care facility. We'll document each of them. We'll seek their owners if they have any. And for the strays, well, you've given them a chance they never would have had." Ben nods. "Thank you." The worker smiles, then glances at Cooper. "And him?" Ben looks down at his dog, his loyal, brave, remarkable dog. Cooper rests his head gently on Ben's leg. "He's coming home with me," Ben answers with a soft laugh. "Always." The worker nods, understanding completely. The sun climbs higher, the clouds thin into wisps. Cooper stands again, taking in the quiet transformation of the world that survived the storm. His fur glows faintly in the light, golden and warm. Later that afternoon, when the neighborhood begins its long process of cleanup and recovery, Ben stands in the middle of his broken living room. The damage is severe. The repairs will be extensive. But every step forward feels lighter knowing what they've accomplished. Cooper joins him. Together they survey the destruction not with sorrow, but with a kind of solemn gratitude. Then, as if guided by instinct, Cooper walks to the far end of the room where the ceiling collapsed hardest. He sits there, gazing out through the broken section where the sky now peeks through. Ben sits beside him. The sunlight spills in, warming the floor. "It's going to be a lot of work," Ben murmurs. "But we'll get through it." Cooper leans gently into him. Outside, the faint chirping of birds returning to the neighborhood mingles with the distant hum of rescue vehicles and neighbors' voices. Small signs of life continuing. The world slowly stitches itself back together. And as the day moves toward evening, the sky takes on a soft, golden glow that seems fitting for Cooper's presence. Ben wraps an arm around him. "We're safe. They're safe. And that's more than enough." Cooper lets out a quiet huff, tail swishing softly against the floor. In the calm, after the storm, in the rebuilt rhythm of a neighborhood healing together, Cooper's courage becomes a story that will be told again and again. A story of a dog who sensed danger before any human, who braved floodwaters and debris to guide lost creatures toward refuge, who stayed awake through every echo of thunder to ensure no life under his care would be abandoned. A story that ends not in loss, but in hope. The kind of hope that grows only when someone extraordinary steps forward in the darkest night. And in the quiet warmth of the fading afternoon light, the story reaches its final, gentle breath. Ben and Cooper sit together on the porch, the world around them returning piece by piece, and know with full hearts that every life sheltered under their roof was saved, because one brave dog refused to leave anyone behind.